Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, How Aruba-HPE and Nutanix Optimize Support Operations in the Experience Economy, brought to you by Technology Services Industry Association and sponsored by SupportLogic. My name is Vanessa Lucero, and I'll be your moderator for today. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded. A link to the recording of today's presentation will be sent to you within 24 hours via email. Audio will be delivered via streaming. All attendees will be in a listen-only mode. Your webinar controls, including volume, are found in the toolbar at the bottom of the webinar player. We encourage your comments and questions. If you think of a question for the presenters at any point, please submit through the Ask a Question box on the top left side of the webinar player. We will open it up for a verbal Q&A portion at the end of today's session. Lastly, feel free to enlarge the slides to full screen at any time by selecting one of the full screen buttons, which will appear in the top right corner of the slide player. I would now like to introduce our presenters today. John Ragsdale, Distinguished Vice President of Technology Research for TSIA. Joshua Simon, Senior Director of Customer Support for Aruba Global TAC. Deepak Shah, Vice President of Worldwide Support for Nutanix. And Krishna Raja, Founder and CEO of SupportLogic. As with all of our TSIA webinars, we do have a lot of exciting content to cover in the next 45 minutes. So let's jump right in and get started. John, over to you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. At each of our conferences, Vanessa and I do a session where we talk to attendees about what they like about our webinar program, what they would like to see more of, and the feedback that we always get is you want to see more conversational webinars. And today, you picked a great one to attend because we're going to spend most of our time today with a panel discussion. So the format, I'm going to open with a couple of slides to set the stage, and then each of our presenters is going to talk a little bit about what they're doing at their companies that's cool and innovative around this topic, and then we're going to move into a panel discussion. So I would really encourage you to start submitting your questions as they occur to you, because we should have plenty of time to get through a lot of questions today. So just to set the stage, late last year I published a research report, Building the Digital Infrastructure for Support. You can find that on our website, whether you're a member or a non-member. I believe that is a publicly available report today. I'm not going to go through all of the elements in this diagram, but I wanted to focus in on one particular area, and that is around creating better sentiment analysis, looking at all of your CRM, your service desk information, as well as the content within the various applications throughout your enterprise. And one of the big challenges that companies face is how can they proactively understand the customer experience. And you would be surprised how many companies come to us and say, what do our customers want? And I always say, well, how should I know what your customers want? Why don't you ask them? And we'll see them, bringing in consultants to interview customers, but the truth is there is so much information around what customers like and don't like and what they're looking for locked into the systems you have today, and we're going to explore that, how you can leverage automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, to better analyze your existing content and start proactively understanding customer sentiment much better than you have in the past. Another thing that we get asked about a lot at TSIA is please stop telling us the potential for AI and tell us who's doing it and what are the pace setters doing, what are the sort of results they're seeing. And there is a big element of AI in today's discussion. One of the things that I continually talk about is there is so much out-of-box available today, and the companies that are struggling usually try to build it all themselves. And unless you happen to be an AI company, it may not be in your DNA to build it all from scratch. So we're going to talk today about what is available out of box. So some of the examples we're going to hear today: predicting the likelihood of escalation. Wouldn't that be nice every time you open a case? Identify common issues impacting satisfaction and renewals, which you think across a large call center, there could be, a lot of repeat issues that you're not recognizing because a different person is taking that issue every time. And finally, automatic expertise management, intelligent case assignment. Now that we're all working remotely and you can't reach your head over the cubicle and ask a question, we definitely need more automation about who the experts are on various topics. So one final note, at our fall conference in Las Vegas last year, I led a keynote panel, Real-World Examples of Digital Transformation, and one of our panelists today, Krishna Rajraja, was on that panel, and I've got a link here to the YouTube recording of that session. So I would really encourage you to click through afterwards and take a look at that. We had some great conversations there. And with that, I would like to turn things over to our first panelist. Joshua Simon has worked in the customer support industry since 2001 with companies including Dell, EMC, and CSS. Joshua started as a tech support engineer and has had various roles in management over the last 15-plus years, including quality functions. He has been with Aruba Network since 2012 as Senior Director, responsible for global customer support and the TAC function, with teams located in various parts of the globe. Aruba is a Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, or HPE company, and they are a leading provider of secure, intelligent networks that enable customers to thrive and deliver amazing digital experiences in the mobile, IoT, and cloud era. They are changing the rules of networking to make it simple for IT and organizations to bridge the physical and digital worlds at the edge. Well, Joshua, welcome to today's webinar.
Hey, thank you, John. Thank you, Krishna, for the invite. Glad to share my little story of how we use ML and AI in our operations. Just a quick note again on Aruba. We provide networking solutions and products to largely enterprise customers. About what we focus on in our Aruba support, we focus on four things. First one is we focus on improving delivery efficiency as we get in more products, more tighter integration, and as the cases grow. So I think one thing is definitely the scalability of efficiency. The second thing that I would like to highlight is we like to call ourselves the biggest small company. Why? Because while we grow, we want to be nimble and flexible to our customers. So one of the key things in support that we focus is in being flexible to the diverse customers and product groups that we have. Third thing, our product is definitely complex. It's probably on the fourth quadrant of complexity. Training and finding engineers is not as easy as we would want it to be. So engineers are as important as our customers. So what we want to do is ensure that we give them the right tools and systems so that they can take care of our customers easily. The last one is, of course, since we are reactive, TAC being reactive in many ways, we always wanted to have an early warning system in place which can tell us much in advance that, okay, where is the customer sentiment going, or is there an escalation that's going to come our way, and proactively take care of that. That's been our focus all throughout our support operations. About a company, we have, as John rightly said, we have about 30 plus support centers across the globe, which includes customer care and TAC, right from level 1 to level 4. We have 1,000 plus service professionals. We deal with more than 250,000 cases a year. And you can, of course, see the high-level tech stack that we deal with. So that's about Aruba. So moving on our journey with ML and AI. We became a part of larger HPE, which is very, very good for us. With that came some challenges with CRM because of standardization processes that we need to follow, and other restrictions that we had to customize things. We also try to do some in-house development of AI, which possibly we are slow or not able to catch up with how fast we need to do that. That's when actually support logic came in, and we found that the groundwork has already been done, and it's almost like a plug and play for us. But what we really wanted to do was use the big data or AI and ML to provide us early warning systems in place, so that, you know what, I know much earlier where my case is headed towards, and take care of that proactively. But and also what we wanted to do is, I think most of you are aware, one of the most common processes in the tech support of the enterprise world is something known as backlog reviews or self-reviews. As soon as an engineer starts his day, he needs to go and check what's the update on the cases, what he needs to prioritize, and what should he do to action them. That's also the same thing that goes for supervisors and managers. That takes a lot of our time. So what we wanted to do is we are always on the lookout for something that can reduce this governance or overhead in doing these reviews. The second thing that we wanted to do is prioritize cases based on sentiment and just not the age of the case, because age of the case does not necessarily always indicate the priority. So what we wanted to do is something that could read through all the text notes and then come, okay, you know what, this customer is the most important thing right now for today, and prioritize that, and of course along with urgency and attention. With support logic, what we achieved, of course, we reduced more than 60% of the time that we spend on these reviews or in governance of these cases. Of course, CSAT has always been good, but the interesting fact is we are able to achieve that CSAT and NPS with much lesser governance time, which is we saved 60% on the backlog review. And also our MTTR is significantly reduced, so 25% of the overall mean time to resolve. Moving on, so what do we plan to do next? So with this ML and AI tool, something that we got is a very high correlation of the underlying factors that determine NPS and CSAT. So what we always saw was CSAT and NPS is usually survey-based, it's sample-based, and not necessarily it always provides the sentiments of all the customers. Even though we had a 15 to 20% return rate, we wanted to capture the sentiments of all the customers in the field, not just a sample, not just a set of customers. And we found that the underlying factors that the tool, the support logic, actually is able to throw out, like, for example, ownership scores, support wait time, responsiveness, case content, customer sentiment history, and all these very highly correlate with CSAT and NPS. And we are able to measure that for 100% of the conversations, cases, or accounts. So what we want to do is make that our measurement system, and of course our NPS and CSAT is going to be a byproduct of that anyway. So we plan to operationalize these as metrics, look at trends and alerts and notifications, so that we don't have to worry about the surveys that go out, because it's anyway going to be on how we take care of these things. Other thing we want to close loop on these on this early warning system, basically. So a lot of sentiments, behavior of the customer and the tech is captured in the life cycle of a case, and the scores are recorded. What we want to do is, so the next time the customer comes in, so depending on how the previous sentiments were, the patterns of the case, we want to ensure that the customer is routed to the right set of engineer, depending on the criticality, depending on priority, or what are the complexity. So support logic data helps us there. Okay, based on the past experience, what is the recommended routing protocol? So we want to use that. That's where we're headed towards. And of course, our sales and engineering had a glimpse of this tool. They are quite excited to implement this early warning and AI-based system to improve their products, because again, they don't want to go on a survey methodology to find out how the product is doing. They want to capture each and every conversation that the customer has with HPE or Aruba in feedback for the product, and the tool does it really well and they want to improve their product, and also the sales team want to see if there's any churn risk because of support or sales, and also there are any leads. So that's where we are headed towards. This is Aruba's journey with ML AI in short. So I will open up for any questions if you have me now, or maybe we can do it later.
Let me ask you a quick question before we move on. You've got over 1,000 employees, 30 plus support centers, and now they're all working at home. And I'm wondering how this early warning system, this ability to better automatically triage cases, is that helping you deal with all of this remote work, since people aren't able to easily stick their head over a cubicle and collaborate now?
Oh, absolutely, John. So yes. So as I had mentioned, we reduced more than 60% of efforts in governance, which means helping people prioritize cases. So at least I don't have to worry about lack of management or resources in taking or reviewing cases. With this tool, it gives me enough alerts, early warning systems. Thereby, I don't have the people to keep on looking into it and saying, hey, something is going to go wrong. So this throws that out. So that's definitely a plus point, and it's come at the right time for us. Yes, with this in place, I think it's like finding the right needles in the haystack. The earlier process was I need to churn maybe thousands of cases to find out, hey, what are the 100 cases that I need to take care of? Now the tool looks into hundreds of thousands of cases to give me, hey, these are the 3 things that you need to prioritize, and it's spot on. So absolutely, yes, to answer your question, it has come at the right time for us.
Well, Joshua, thank you for those opening comments, and Joshua will be participating in our panel discussion in just a few minutes. And now I'd like to introduce our next panelist. Deepak Chawla leads worldwide support for Nutanix, where he started working in 2013. Prior to Nutanix, Deepak held senior support management roles for over 20 years in both startups and larger corporations such as Sybase, now a division of SAP, VMware, and Cisco, where he led the incubation of a technical services team to support the converged architecture between server, networking, and storage switches and virtualization software. Some of his specializations include global and scalable teams, multi-vendor support, setting up communities and knowledge management systems with a laser focus on customer satisfaction. He has built a world-class support team from scratch over the last 6 years, and Nutanix has won multiple awards from TSIA, our Star Award, also awards from ASP Online and CRMI over this period that due to his incredibly high CSAT and Net Promoter Scores, which was averaged best-in-class 90 over the last 6 years. Deepak is also a board member at TSANet and a customer advisory board member at Salesforce. Nutanix builds products that make it easy for people to work and play from anywhere, providing IT with a simpler, more efficient, secure, and cost-effective way to deliver applications and data to their organizations. Deepak, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, John, and thank you very much for the kind introduction. So, as John said, I've been with Nutanix for about 7 years or so, and my presentation will follow a very similar format to the one that Joshua provided. So Nutanix, as John mentioned, is in the business of hyper-converged infrastructure, right? We created this category, and now, of course, pretty much every company has it. So our vision has always been that all corporations will have a hybrid of private cloud and public cloud, right? Because of the workloads, because of security concerns, because of cost, there always will be certain workloads that will run inside or on-prem and certain that will run in the cloud. And what we provide is the infrastructure to run those efficiently, simply, etc., and also the ability to move workloads easily from on-prem to public cloud and vice versa. So in terms of support, right, we regard support at Nutanix as part of the overall experience, part of the product. So it's not an afterthought, right? And we built the support exactly the same way as we build the product. We want it to be resilient. We want it to be simple. We want it to be complete. And in that sense, then, what we have done is to have some basic principles on which we base support. So I won't go into all of the numbers in there, 10 support centers, over 700 folks, 200,000 cases, etc., and then the stack. But I will move on to basically the principles, right, which we think are our differentiator and really a competitive advantage as we go into a highly competitive world. So the single number or the single metric that we focus on in support is the Net Promoter Score or customer loyalty, because we believe it is the sales' role to get the first PO from the customer. It is support's role to get the fourth and the fifth, because it's not just the capability of the product, but the overall experience that the customer values, which basically drives repeat sales, which drives them being a promoter and actually recommending the product to other prospects or customers, and that's how we expand our footprint. So how do we do this, right? One of the other principles that we based our support site on, and don't laugh, but we believe this is true, is that customers hate calling support. The reason they hate calling support is because of the experiences in the past where they get, they get bounced between support engineers. Every time they get a new support engineer, they feel they have to explain themselves all over again. They get put on hold. If it's a multi-vendor product, they get bounced between vendors saying, not my problem, go talk to this other person or arrange this 4-way conference call and we'll participate in there. Just makes the person's life very complicated. They are trying to run a business, not spend all of their time troubleshooting and maintaining their systems, right? So our principle then was, how do we get to that level of simplicity? So the first thing that we did was we built a very resilient and very redundant product, which we hope will never fail. Now, we know that that's not true, right? Products do fail. Hardware fails. Software sometimes works, sometimes fails. But regardless, there is the need to get support help. And the first inclination of the customer, especially in this era, is not to pick up the phone and call support. They want to help themselves and see if they can solve that problem. So in that regard, we give them tools, we give them knowledge at their fingertips that can help hone down the problem, that can help solve the issue quickly, and basically get them on their way to building their business. Now, finally, if the problem is not prevented and if the problem is not solved through our tools and they have to call support, we want to give them the best experience, right? And we do this through having extensive training, not just in the technical realm, but also in terms of soft skills, right? Walking a mile in the customer's shoes, being empathetic, treating customers the exact way that we would like to be treated by our vendors or our partners. So all that having been said, right, this is kind of our continuum of support. How do we make that experience better? And definitely in today's day and age, where, as Joshua said, we have a big data problem when you're dealing with 16,000 customers and, 250,000 of the servers that we are supporting, etc. So how do we get down to the root of the problem and how do we solve that quickly? And in that regard, we have definitely delved into using AI and ML extensively in our organization. And there are two parts to it, right? There is definitely what we can gain from our customer base. And then there's the part where when a call comes in, how do you deal with that efficiently? How do you have the history? How do you get the context? And how do you know what's more critical than the other pieces? And in that regard, we did look at building something ourselves through a small tools team that I have in my organization, or looking at out-of-the-box products from outside. And what we found was that there was a clear match between what Support Logic was doing through its products and what their goals were versus what we were trying to achieve. So we did partner with them, and similar to HPE Aruba, there are a couple of different areas that we use Support Logic for. So the first one is case assignment, right? So 85% of our cases either come in through the portal or they come in through our alerts or our call home system. So we already have the case description. We already know the customer before we call them, right, and engage with them, etc. And we use AI ML to basically filter these, get an understanding of who the best support engineer is to support that and get them engaged and have them hit the ground running when they engage with the customer. Now, the other piece that, or the other area that we partner with Support Logic is the escalation management function. So very similar to HPE, earlier we had a brute force approach where the case gets this many days old and a support manager goes and basically sifts through the case and tries to understand if this is probably going to be escalated in the future, et cetera, and what action needs to be taken to prevent that, right? And as the case volume has grown, this brute force way is no longer scalable. So we use Support Logic again to have the sentiment analysis, understand the history of the problem from the call home tools that we use, et cetera, the 360 view of the customer, and determine what are the cases that need more attention or more collaboration, et cetera, and address them. And as a result of the efficiencies we've achieved through these tools, you can see where we are in terms of our NPS, our resolution time, our reduction in escalation. So definitely leverage scalability and leverage efficiencies in our system than we would have achieved doing this on a case-by-case basis. So even as we look forward then, the goal is to continue that journey. There will be some things that we will continue to build in our product, in our, through my tools team to make things efficient. At the same time, I will look to partners like Support Logic to help enhance that experience and really give the customer the best experience possible through support where they are actually delighted with the product, not just, doing okay with support. So that's our goal as we go forward. And, the ultimate goal is to provide them with invisible support where they don't even have to think about support, right? The infrastructure is always on, always available, and the customers just continue to run their business. So I'll stop there again and see if there are any questions, or John, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, let me ask you a quick question. You mentioned going with out-of-box technology around AI and analytics, and that's something I'm always recommending. But it seems like so many companies think they have to build this themselves, and they frequently fail trying to do that. There's never enough data scientists available, and if you do have them, they're probably all working for sales and marketing, not services. So why do you think it is people want to build it themselves? Is it just the mindset of tech companies, or are they not realizing what's available out of box?
So that's a great question, John, and I think it's a little bit of both, right? So, and we've done kind of a combination, a combined strategy where there are analytics that we have built into the product to get a 360 view of the customer, right out of the box, the history of cases, what have their issues been in the past, et cetera. And similar to what Josh said, when you get a case and, if you have 700 support engineers and they open 20 cases, go to 20 different support engineers, and if you don't have some of this built in, then each case is worked independent of each other. And you may not recognize the patterns, and you may not actually be able to get to the root cause of what is really going on with that customer. So you may fix the symptom, really not the root cause. So there are definitely tools that we build in-house. But at the same time, as you said, it's we do partner with partners like Support Logic. So a couple of things, right? If the goals align, then definitely the time to market is of essence. I could have my tools team build it, but maybe it'll take them 18 months to do it. And Krishna and his team already have something that we can use out of the box. The other piece is maintenance, right? What if you lose your top, full stack developer? Now you have to replace them. Now they have to learn what happened with the system, etc. Whereas all of that can be done with an external team as well. So yeah, companies do tend to think that they will be able to do things efficiently because they understand the domain, they understand the exact problem, and maybe they can, if there are small enhancements to be made, then they could do it very efficiently and, do the customizations. But if you look at the long-term picture, I think it completely makes sense to have a hybrid strategy where there are things that can be or that should be part of the integral part of the product versus there are areas that it probably makes a lot more sense to partner with a company that has the domain expertise and has been doing this for a while.
Yeah, it certainly accelerates your ability to deliver. Well, Deepak, thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce our third panelist today. Krishna Raj Raja is the founder and CEO at SupportLogic, a very cool Silicon Valley startup that offers the intelligent support platform built on artificial intelligence and natural language processing to extract sentiment from all customer interactions to help organizations reduce customer escalations, prioritize work, and drive operational efficiency. Krishna was the first employee for VMware in India, and he joined the VMware support organization when it was only 5 members strong. Krishna helped scale the VMware support function, and he was also a key member of the VMware Performance Engineering Group. Krishna, welcome to today's webinar.
Thanks, John. Thanks for the kind introduction. First of all, I want to thank Deepak and Joshua for sharing your success story with all of us. It's also very insightful to understand it's not just about tools, but how when tools combined with process and a very clear intent that you want to change a metric, you can actually achieve those changes. This is often overlooked, that tools alone doesn't solve problems. Tools, intent, and when you have a process in place, you can make a tremendous transformation. So today I just want to talk a little bit about SupportLogic overall and what actually made us to build this product and the key technology behind the scenes. And then I'm happy to take questions after that. So just a little bit about the motivation of the company, why SupportLogic exists. So the fundamental issue that I've noticed is that ticketing systems have tremendous amount of data, but it requires human beings to read that data, process that data, and then collect metadata about the data that you're reading, and then capture that in your ticketing system to derive any value out of it. So there's a lot of manual labor. So it always occurred to me why ticketing systems don't bother about what they are storing. They don't read any of the tickets. They don't care what you store. For all you know, you can store junk data there, and it doesn't matter for a ticketing system. So it always bothered me why ticketing systems don't have that capability. So this is something I've been noodling about it since 2004 when I was doing support for VMware back in those days. So the recent advancements in AI and NLP has really opened doors to process unstructured data in the way it is not possible before. The reason we are so used to using metadata, like rows and columns metadata, is because technology only can process structured data. It cannot process unstructured data. So AI and NLP is the very first time allows us to peek into this unstructured data. And once you look into unstructured data, the kind of signals that you can extract from that is pretty immense. And the signals in isolation, even in a single ticket, is extremely valuable. But when you do it across thousands of tickets and you see patterns emerging among these tickets, you get really deep insights. This is what human beings are really good at. When I was a support engineer, I used to read hundreds of tickets every day. I used to read discussion forums every day. And when you read this information, you form tribal knowledge in your head. You understand intuitively what the customer pain points are, where the product needs to be improved, why the customer gets frustrated. All of that is intuitive knowledge you gain by reading those tickets. Now with the ability to process unstructured data using AI and NLP, you can actually train the system to get that same intuition. So to the point that your intelligence layer now becomes a central nervous system on top of your existing data sources, like your ticketing systems or discussion forums. And once you have that, you can build context. You can understand context across transactional boundaries, conversational boundaries, and you can start providing recommendations within support, but also you can provide recommendations to product, engineering, sales, and customer success functions. So this was the genesis story of support logic. We basically read every ticket using an NLP, extract the signals, maintain context, compute sentiment score, compute a dynamic urgency score, compute the probability that a case will get escalated, compute the churn risk of this customer based on the past interaction, all just from unstructured data. So that's the core essence. Architecturally, what we have done is we are an abstraction layer on top of underlying ticketing system. So the underlying ticketing system could be your Salesforce, Zendesk, Freshdesk. It doesn't matter what the underlying ticketing system is. We are an abstraction layer. I would say our abstraction layer is very similar to virtualization layer on top of physical machines. So we treat the underlying ticketing systems like physical machines, and support logic intelligence layer is the abstraction layer. And with this abstraction layer, you can provide intelligence at the case level. We can give intelligence for support engineers. We can give intelligence for customer success team, to product management team. And we can maintain this context. So now the tribal knowledge stays with the company. It doesn't stay with a human being. And as you continue to interact with your customers, as your customer patterns and behaviors change, the system can continue to give you new recommendations based on what it sees now and what it has seen in the past. So that's our architectural overview without going into the full details. I thought I'll throw that out there because I know the first two speakers were talking about the impact that we are making on their organization. I thought it would be useful to uncover how it's done behind the scenes.
Well, you know, when I first came to your offices and met with you to learn about the product well over a year ago, I was so impressed with the way you were discussing that you were liberating data. And my question for you, Krishna, and then I think this would be a good segue into the panel discussion, is do you find companies surprised at how much intelligence is available using the data they already have? And then maybe our panelists could talk about, you know, were they shocked to find how much intelligence could be gleaned from their existing content?
Yeah, so John, the reason I use the word liberating data is because I felt like the ticketing systems have tremendous amount of data, but they're holding them hostage because the value of the data is not easy to extract. The only way to extract it is through metadata, because the only reporting you can do is through metadata, which means you have to put a lot of human beings to read the ticket and then classify the ticket and tag the tickets correctly. And that becomes a bottleneck. You really cannot understand insights at scale. And so that's why I felt like the AI and NLP enabling technology truly liberates the dependency on metadata, and then you can start focusing on unstructured data. As human beings, we do everything unstructured way. We don't talk like a bot. We don't talk like a structured format. But yet, the systems we're using today requires that conformity. And I think when you liberate that, possibilities emerge, amazing possibilities emerge. Going back to the point about the signals and the knowledge that exists in the ticketing systems, even simple things like sentiment, the general intuition is, hey, sentiment, support, people come to you when you're unhappy. So obviously the sentiment is going to be unhappy. So what's the insight there? The key insight, what we're seeing here is that when you extract the sentiments and you look at different dimensions of how the sentiments are appearing, and when we do extract sentiments, it's not about positive or negative. We can say, is it frustration, is it impatient, is it confusion? There's all the dimensions of sentiment. And then you also then look at your existing metadata and you slice and dice them. You really get some really interesting patterns and trends. You can understand if the customer is getting frustrated because of your support offering, the support professional, or is it because of the product itself? Once you understand the distinction, then it becomes easier to send the recommendations to the right team. So there's a lot of hidden knowledge. And I've given this analogy in the past. It's almost like dark matter. I mean, dark matter is part of the universe, and 95% of the universe is dark matter and dark energy, yet we don't process it. We don't analyze them. And similarly, the unstructured data in the ticketing system is very similar. So the amount of knowledge you can gather from that is pretty enormous.
Yeah, I love the dark matter analogy. Well, I'd like to bring the other panelists into this discussion. Joshua and Deepak, were you initially pessimistic that you could really uncover a lot of intelligence with your existing data, and were you surprised at what you uncovered?
Yeah, so this is Deepak. In my case, I was definitely cautiously optimistic, right? I mean, AI, ML, one has touted that term for a while. But as you said, right, to actually see it in operation and actually gaining those efficiencies, I had not had a lot of true examples of before we started on this journey. But I think Krishna and his team were very convincing in what they were doing. And, we definitely have some benchmarks and goals that we had set for ourselves as to where we wanted to see our teams be. And I have actually been very pleasantly surprised at the immediate return on investment that we have made in these technologies. I expected that it would be a longer journey. So definitely I think the technology is there, but more than the technology, I think the core understanding of the problem. And Krishna and I work together at VMware, and I think there's inherent trust there. And definitely this team has come through, and we are very happy with where we are.
Joshua, any thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, we always knew that this was possible, but what we are happy with Support Logic is it required very less effort from Aruba to build it. It was just kind of a plug and play for most part of it. So that's where I think Support Logic did a great job, because we didn't have to spend too much of time developing this for our unstructured data. So yeah, that's where we benefited a lot out of it.
Well, let me ask another question. We heard a lot about customer satisfaction and Net Promoter Score today. At TSIA, we're heavily promoting the use of customer effort scores because we're seeing some really strong correlation between that. I'm curious, it seems like a product like Support Logic would be really helpful in identifying those friction points that are causing issues with your customers. Do any of you have any thoughts on the ability to identify those friction points?
Yeah, I can take this, Joshua.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Yeah, it already has. It already has, John. Support Logic does have ways to measure customer effort score. In fact, the sentiment scores encompasses all of these. So I think we are already there in that.
Yeah, I would echo that, right? So definitely, and I think, as I mentioned in my second slide, right, I mean, that's what customers are looking for, is just ease of use of the product, right, and not even having to necessarily call support. So with time, I definitely see Nutanix partnering a lot more with Support Logic in other areas and reducing that friction even more, and basically affecting the customer effort score in a positive way.
So question from the audience, this is from Patrick. Does the case routing you're doing using Support Logic data, is this routing from one tier to another, or actually routing cases within the same tier and leveraging agent skills?
So I'm assuming this particular one is for me, this is Deepak. So in our case, actually, we do not have tiers of support, right? I mean, that was one of the other principles that we had built support on, was that customers don't like to go between tiers of support, right? Because they go from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 the first time. The next time, they're smart customers, right? They come back and say, hey, just give me level 3 support. Don't even bother with level 1 and level 2. And that kind of defeats the purpose of tiering. So we actually try to train all of our support engineers to a level 3 level, because our goal is level 1 and level 2 are solved through our tools and documentation. Now, that having been said, so what support logic is helping us in is basically analyzing the content of the issue and also the skill set of our support engineers. So I know a lot of companies, myself included in previous companies, we used to build this matrix of here is a list of our 200 support engineers, here are the skills, and we'll rate them on the training that they've been to and what they're interested in doing, etc. And so have some kind of queuing logic to say, all right, this is the best person to take it. What support logic does for us is actually make that dynamic and real time, right? Based on how many cases in a particular area, based on the case description that we get and the keywords, how many cases have been taken by a certain support engineer, what has been their net promoter score and customer sat on that particular case, how quickly has that case been solved, etc. Based on and this keeps changing. With every case that gets added to the system, this keeps changing and gives us a real-time view of the best engineer to do that. And then we have kind of married that with basically a queue assignment bot that we run, and it offers the case to whoever's available at that particular time that has the best skill. And we don't do a hard assignment, but it offers it to the engineer, and if the engineer, for whatever reason, cannot take that case at that particular time, then it goes to the engineer that has the highest score based on all of these factors, the next best engineer, and then they will take that particular case. So again, this has helped us do our queue assignment a lot more efficiently, and that's why I said out there on my slides as well, it's helped us reduce our time to resolution by about 30% because we are targeting the right engineer for the right problem.
John, did we lose you, or are you on mute maybe?
Oh, I'm just talking away on mute. We're getting near the end of our time, but I want to sneak one more question in. Vishal wanted to know about deflection rates. And Joshua and Deepak, I don't know if you're willing to publicly share your self-service deflection rate, but I'd like to morph that slightly and say, one of the challenges that we have is knowing what content to create for self-service. And you've mentioned today that you're able, using support logic, to better identify trends and patterns and common issues. Are you seeing that is helping you better predict what customers are going to ask and better prepare content to fill some of those content gaps, both for employees and for customers doing self-service?
Right. So this is Deepak. So yeah, I mean, definitely, right? So we use Google Analytics, through our website for our portal where our customers come to looking for solutions. And there's a pretty standard formula that had been developed by a consortium a few years ago in terms of how we measure case deflection. Because otherwise, if a case was never created, how do you know that was the problem, right? But we look at page views and Google Analytics to say if a customer went to a particular page, a knowledge page, etc., while they were trying to open a case and then never came back to it for 48 hours, we assume with 80% probability that particular case was deflected and so forth, right? So based on that, our case deflection today is about 33%, right, which is pretty good, which means that we would have to hire 50% more support engineers if we were not investing in technology. And again, in terms of knowledge and curation, right, that is an art in itself. So I've actually got a knowledge-based team, and we are definitely sifting through alerts that we get from the system, or patterns of cases that we get, or critical bugs that we find in the system, etc. And based on that, we actually write knowledge-based articles, and then we have champions for each area of the product, so that as they are looking at more content or what's the content to create, they look to see the product improvements, what investments have been going on in a certain area, and then what is redundant and what is duplicated, etc., so that we keep the content very, very fresh and continue to increase case deflection over time. And that has definitely shown some improvement. Again, to that point, we are doing a lot of that manually today. I mean, we're getting the data, but in terms of curation, et cetera, a lot of that is going on manually. I'm hoping Support Logic is thinking of or doing something in that knowledge arena as well, where we can take advantage of that and gain more efficiencies.
John, if I may just step in, just had a couple of comments there. So we do, as Deepak pointed out, we do keyword extraction from the corpus of conversations that you're having with your customers. And often this keyword extraction can show you patterns and trends in what kind of issues are more frequently appearing in your cases. So that becomes an insight for knowledge content creation. More recently, we did very interesting keyword detection, not for knowledge content creation, but more for customer experience. We started tracking COVID-19 related keywords, and we started to surface them up in our dashboard. And the reason is that if a customer is impacted by COVID-19, you may want to give them special attention to those cases. And surfacing it up and making sure those cases getting prioritized really make sure that you're delivering the best customer experience possible. So the keyword extraction has multiple use cases, so I just wanted to point that out.
Well, thank you for that. It's been a great discussion. We still have a lot of questions in queue, but unfortunately we're nearing the end of our time together. So Vanessa, I'm going to turn it back to you to close us out.
Okay, well, thank you so much, John, and to all of our presenters today. Since we have come to the conclusion of today's webinar, I'd like to just give a couple of quick reminders before we sign off. There will be an exit survey at the end of today's live webinar. Please take a few minutes to provide your feedback on the content and your experience by filling out that brief survey, and a link to the recorded version of today's webinar will be sent out within the next 24 hours. I'd now like to take this time to thank all of our presenters, John, Joshua, Deepak, and Krishna, for delivering an outstanding conversation. And thank you everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's webinar, How Aruba-HPE and Nutanix Optimize Support Operations in the Experience Economy, brought to you by Technology Services Industry Association and sponsored by Support Logic. We look forward to seeing you at our next TSIA webinar. Take care, everyone.